Right. Good afternoon, everyone, to our SENS version 3 webinar number 5. And today, last time we focused a bit on what's kind of new on the forms and how they are coded, etc. And today we want to focus a little bit more on what is new with the tools. Having said that, it's not that the tools are completely new, but it's kind of a refresher on what tools are available on the back-end server side, etc. for you. So I'll just going into the detailed agenda. So we will have a brief overview of the tools and how they are connected. Then we look a little bit at the data collection with ODK Collect. And then we drill into the survey and data management with the Kobo Toolbox. I'm sure many of you know it. And then we will also look at the survey and data management with Raspberry Pi. I'm pretty sure nobody knows that, but it's in fact ODK Aggregate as well. I'll explain that a little bit later on what that means. And it's nothing to eat, so it's not a pie, it's a server, but I'll explain that a little bit later. All right, so I think it can be a bit tricky to choose what platforms you want to use, and we've kind of developed a decision tree here with a couple of questions, really looking at the internet connection, because that is the determining factor on which of the platforms you can actually use. So if you have a strong and stable internet connection, then nothing prevents you from using actually the UNHCR Kobo Toolbox, the online one. And I'm sure some of you are actually doing that. However, if you are not having a strong and stable internet connection, then you would need to ask yourself whether you already have the ODK Aggregate VM installed on a computer, meaning you actually have a dedicated survey computer in your operation where this is already set up. Then if this is a clear yes, then easy enough, you actually just go with that computer because everything is set up there already. And if the answer is actually no, then you would need to see whether you have either you yourself or someone in your operation has the necessary IT skills to install ODK Aggregate. We have a tutorial developed for that. But with the more recent versions of Aggregate VM, this has become a little bit more tricky. I'm not saying it's impossible to do, but it does take a little bit of tweaking around. And depending on how the computers are set up, you might have to troubleshoot a little bit less or a little bit more. So it does require a bit of, okay, I don't mind, I'll look for possible errors and have the time to actually do that. And if you can answer that with a yes, then by all means go for the ODK Aggregate VM. And if you have to answer that with a no, then we still have another option, and that is the Raspberry Pi. That's an offline server, and we have prepared a couple of those, and they can be requested and sent from HQ. And I explain them a little bit more in detail later during the webinar today. So in order to also explain you that you can take an informed decision, the pros and cons of the tools. So basically, the pros of the UNHCR Kobo Toolbox are, of course, it's there and it's very user friendly. It's run and set up by UNHCR, and it's easy to use. You actually don't have to convert any files to XML. So if you work on your XLS or you get your XLS sent from someone who helped you to adjust it, you can just upload it as it is. And then you have the possibility of sharing online. So this makes it adapted for country level types of surveys, where you might not be able to actually collect the devices yourself and sync them, where you would actually depend on people sending it from different type of the regions. You have like one form, but they are sending it from different regions, etc. And you might need to share with another survey manager, and then that would actually be easy to do with the Kobo Toolbox. The cons is its briefcase is not compatible with Kobo Toolbox anymore, and that could lead to potential syncing issues. I mean, Kobo Toolbox by now also has a bulk upload feature, but it's not always working that well. So that easy transfer from data from one account to the next, as you are able with Aggregate by using Briefcase, is not possible on Kobo Toolbox, because the way the actual forms are stored on the server is different, making it like a unique form and with a unique ID, and that's why you cannot easily exchange and load the data to another account on Kobo anymore. And then you can only share the project or the survey or the dataset only with users that have an account on Kobo Toolbox. So anyone that you need to share with does need to have an account on the same Toolbox server. So it's no use if you try and share with someone with the OCHA, the humanitarian account. That will not work. And obviously needs to be someone who also has an account on the UNHCR Kobo Toolbox. All right. Then over to Aggregate. So the pros are undoubtedly when you're having an unreliable or a no internet connection. The sharing rights inside Aggregate can actually easily be put into place. You don't need to create an account for each role, but you can actually assign yourself a username and a password if you need to. So if you really want it and you have specific phones always been going to a specific enumerator, you could actually be setting it up that way that they have their very own password. Normally within the SENS context, that's not always necessary, but it would be possible if ever you felt there was a need for it. And obviously the cons are clearly that it's not so easy to install the VM anymore these days if it's not kind of set up on the computer already, or if you don't have an ICT colleague or super advanced IMO that doesn't mind or trying a few things on installing it. And it's also not so adapted for country level surveys where you need to be sharing the survey and the data sets remotely. I mean, because you are setting up your very own server in your office, then no one from outside can actually access it. You would need to be on the same network, which is not a real network, which is just kind of a fake network that you create for your survey computer and your phones. And in that sense, it's not possible to do this remotely. You would need the devices to come back to your office in order for that to work. And of course, you need to convert the XLS files to XML. Not that this is complicated, but of course it adds an additional step, and that's why, it adds a mini bit of a constraint here. So for the Raspberry Pi, it's actually since it's the same as the Aggregate VM before. It's well adapted when having unreliable or no internet connection. Now, but it's really easy to install because it's a mini server that you just plug in to a router with a LAN cable. I'm going to show you a picture a little bit later so that it becomes more visual and clear for you. So super easy to do, plug in, and then you can actually use it. The sharing rights is of course the same as on Aggregate. You could set them in place if you ever needed to. And of course, Briefcase of course works well with Aggregate because it has actually been set up to work with Aggregate in the first place. The constraints are, of course, the same as they were with Aggregate before, the conversion and the fact that you have it on your mini server that is just plugged into your router and connected with your computer, and therefore you cannot be sharing anything remotely at all. All right. Now, of course, you all know what Open Data Kit is, ODK Collect, because you have been using it before. I would assume all of you have been using it before. It actually is also the most well-known MDC solution in the humanitarian sector, and it's widely used. It's a basis for numerous systems. I don't know if some of you have come across, maybe not at HCR, but with other colleagues in your respective areas where you work. For instance, ONA would be a system that is based also on ODK Collect, because it's open source. Many more commercial providers that have built around a full service around it have actually been using ODK Collect or the source code for the whole solution and have adapted it further. Yeah. And another advantage is, of course, that it's possible to deploy it with different profiles. You can do it offline. You can do it offline with USB, offline on local network, etc., etc. So there's quite a bit possible here. So why would you use ODK Collect over Kobo Collect? I know there's always a bit of a debate because many of you might be using the Kobo Toolbox, the Kobo server for storing the data. So why would you then be using ODK Collect instead of Kobo Collect? Well, the reason is that Kobo Collect is actually based on ODK Collect, and it usually does take them a little bit more of time to issue a new version. I think it has gotten a bit, I think the delays are not as big as they used to be. I think a year ago or 2 years ago, sometimes the delays were at least half a year. But still, ODK Collect is, when you have a new version of ODK Collect, this is kind of the brand new thing. And then for Kobo Collect, it's just going to be rebranded with a different logo to look a little bit differently. So it usually has the more advanced features if you go for ODK Collect, and therefore we definitely recommend that. There can be an issue if you have both of them on the phone, because they actually tend to use the same directory on the phone. So some of you might have noticed, if you actually have both of them, that whenever you try to open something, that you're actually being asked whether you want to open it with ODK Collect or with Kobo Collect. There was a time in between when there was really a big bug that you wouldn't actually be able to open one of them anymore. I think that has been rectified with the newest versions, but still there is a bit of a dependency. So unless you really need to have them both, we don't recommend having both on your phone. Just so that you are aware that this can cause a little bit of an issue. Oops, sorry, that was too fast. So what is Kobo Toolbox? It's an online server that was developed by the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative with support from UNHCR. However, since this is all a open source code, it is possible that organizations can actually be using the code, and UNHCR has invested in its own server, and they've also contributed to the code of Kobo Toolbox by helping to finance the development of the server as well, but using the spin-off or using a branch as for their own server. I mean, this is predominantly to make it a bit secure, because it's sitting on your own server and it's actually not sitting on the OCHA server. I think occasionally there are still people that use in UNHCR that use the OCHA server, and maybe if you need to share them with colleagues from WFP or others that will depend on the OCHA server, then there's not much you can do. However, if you have the chance, then it's a lot better using the UNHCR server, because then it's in-house and it's a bit more controllable if you so want. Right, creating an account is fairly easy. I'm just going to snap out of the presentation here. Oops, and actually, oops, not this one. This is the one that I wanted. Oh, let me look out quickly. So if you're opening kobo.unhcr.org, normally you land on this. I have saved the username and the password for our training already, but if you actually don't have your own account yet, it's very, very simple to create a new account. You just need to click on create an account here. And then you will need to furnish some of the information here. I mean, the one with the red asterisks are the ones that you need to input. So you don't need to necessarily input the organization's name or not even your own name. Just have a username. Important for the username would be that it's only small letters, and I think underscores are allowed. So not all of the usernames will go, but the interface will, of course, tell you whether or not what you've put in as a username is possible. Now, the email needs to be a real one, because once you've created that account, you need to wait for a confirmation email, and only clicking on that will actually allow you start using the account as well. Just to say, you actually don't need to use your UNHCR email account. This can be created with any email, and you can also encourage partner organizations to use the UNHCR server because they could be using it as well. Yeah, I think that's all that I would have to show here. Let me just quickly go back. Yes, let's deploy a new form. I'll show that also live, I think. That will be a bit more visual. So up, go back here. I'll log in now with my account that I already have. And this is how it looks like, because this is the account that we usually use for training. We have already a form here and a few archived forms that were linked to a training that we had been doing before. Okay, so I do want to deploy a new form, so I just click on new. And since I have an existing XLS form, I click on upload an XLS form. And here I can just be dropping it in. So let me do that. And it gives you the project name. It is usually the name that you have specified in your XLS. Here you can actually enter a description. It's not that you have to, but I could say for training. Then I have that in the description a little bit later. I create the project. This can make sense if you have maybe similar forms with similar names, and you just want to, maybe you want to use one for demoing and one for training or something, then you could be using that. Now, if it's set up like this, you still will not be able to access the form. You need to deploy it first. However, in order to make sure that everything is okay, you can actually preview it on the Enketo wet form before you're deploying it, just in case you want to ensure that maybe the changes that you had put in look right, etc. So this is how you could then be previewing the form before, and then you would go on deploy if you're happy. And now that it's actually deployed, you can actually access it. At the moment, because there is no data here, I only have like 3 tabs. this the summary of the form. Obviously, we haven't inputted any data yet, so it's only showing 0 here ever. It does give us the languages down here. We have the global forms in 4 languages and a number of questions as well. Let's leave it at that. Let me go back here. So we've uploaded the form and we've deployed it. There is also, let me show this also live. There is also a validator inbuilt, because as you will either adapt the XLS yourself to fit the local setting, or you might have someone who helps you with adapting it. Once you want to upload, and there is a validator step inbuilt. In order to demonstrate that, I'll just click again on New, upload an XLS form, and I'll now load a form where I know that there is an error in where we actively put an error in. I just say for demonstration here. Okay. Maybe I put test up here as well, just so that we don't get confused. Okay, all so far so good. If I now click on deploy, it will actually tell me, oopsies, ODK validate error, X form is invalid, see above for the errors. And then you can look here, you see invalid calculate for the bind attached to the variable ID. Now, in order to see what this would be, you would need to find the variable ID. I've already pre-filtered it, but let me show you the full form. So this is how it looks like. The good thing is, if you know that it's the variable ID, you can just go back to here, check on the name, and then filter for ID. Up, we just take this one because it was the ID. And as you can see here, the other error was, let me go back, mismatched brackets or parentheses in the expression position, bracket dot dot. So if I now go back to my form, you can actually see here, yes, this is bracket dot dot, but of course, in order for that to be right, you actually need to have a dot on a bracket on both sides. Otherwise, you have only an opening bracket, but not a closing one. So I could now try and save and just need to upload a new one. If you just want to deploy on top of an existing form already, you can just say replace form. That's also kind of a neat feature to use. We upload the XLS form, and now we retry with this one. And now we try and deploy again. And there you go. It's now being deployed as well. So this is how you can actually find out that there are errors. There is also an online validator that could be used, which I will demonstrate a little bit later, because that one you will have to use for ODK Aggregate anyway. So I'll show that to you a little bit later as well. All right. So what else is important here? I think maybe the element that you could be sharing. Oops, sorry, it's under the summary. You have here now the element of share the project, the one that I mentioned, that this is possible to do with Kobo, that you could share it with other people that also have a Kobo account. And in order to do it here, I'll just enter KTNG as a, and you see these are the different options that you have. Now, the minimum option is view form, for instance, but if you choose, let's say, validate submissions, it already encompasses, if if for some reason you need someone, a supervisor, who will actually be validating the submissions before they are kind of fully used on the server, then the view form and the view submission form comes with it, because you cannot validate the submissions if you are not able to view the submissions. That wouldn't make any sense. Or if you could be adding submissions, then you also would need to be able to view the form, etc. So there are different kind of functions available here, and this is how you could be setting up, as I said, if you have like a survey project that spans over regions, or where you have several involved but not working from the same promises, and everything is kind of set online, then you could be looking into creating those user rights for the respective people to do it. You could, in theory, also share publicly the link. Anyone can use this form, anyone can view submissions, but please don't do that for the SENS. that wouldn't be very good to do. There are, of course, surveys that could be of public or of a wider interest, and for those ones that could make sense, but we don't want to do that for the SENS surveys, that's for sure. All right. So maybe what could be good to show as well is how it looks like with data. Now, because we've only uploaded the form, let's go to the project view so that we can see. So we've uploaded the form for demonstration and for training, but of course none of them actually has data on, because we have not submitted any data. We do have an older form here with data on that I could be showing to you. So I click on this one, and you can see now I have the third tab, which is called Data, upcoming here. You only have that tab when someone has submitted data before. So I'll click on that. You can see Kobo. I mean, for the ones of you that haven't used Kobo much up to now, you can see that it has some inbuilt mini reports, mini graphs. It's I mean, some of them are usable, others are not. I think for the SENS, there are probably very few that you would be able to use, but it's interesting to know at least that there is something like that inbuilt. And just as a little gimmick, I'm going to show you this. Usually the map can only work if you use GPS coordinates, but because we use that for training, we actually did collect some GPS coordinates, and there you can see 2 of them are here, like on top, and you can guess who that was. That was me who submitted some, because that's the area where I live. And then since the training was held physically, it's just that I myself was from remote, was held physically in Kenya. You have all the other records upcoming in Kenya here. This just to show you what's all available on Kobo as well. Now for the download, there are a few things to be aware of. I think the ones of you that have been using Kobo before most likely always use the XLS export type. And then usually it is more advisable to actually choose the XML values and headers, because if you don't do that, you cannot easily plug in into your API-info queries, because you wouldn't, because they are set on the variable names, and if you keep it on English, it will actually download the English description. And so you should be choosing, if you want to use, if you don't want to just download the data set just to have a quick look, but it's really that you want to use it for analysis, then you should be using this. However, and this is the one element that I wanted to highlight, if you actually have been using GPS coordinates and you do want to use the SENS mapper tool, which is available online and which we will be demoing at the next webinar. And then you need to download it as a CSV. Because only when you download it as a CSV, you will actually get the right, it will be structured in the right way so that you can actually upload it to the SENS mapper. So that part is maybe important to know. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. Then again, you just go click on export, it's processing here. And then you can here download the versions as well. I'm not going to download now. I'm sure this is kind of fairly straightforward and clear to you. Huchen, I think one question quickly popped up, but as I'm in presenter mode, I can't see it. Is that a question I should be taking now, or shall we keep it for later?
It is a question for Kobo Toolbox, but I personally, I don't fully understand that, so I just say that to you. How is Kobo Toolbox is accept duplicate data or not?
Okay, normally not. Having said that, I haven't really tried in the last months, but we did find a loophole, and it was accidentally that we found a loophole on how you could be forcing Kobo to accept duplicates. But we counted the steps. It was just a complete and utter coincidence that we stumbled upon this. And I think it needs at least 5 or 6 different steps that someone would need to do if you so want wrongly or on purpose, if you really want to force duplicates on, but then there is no sense in doing that really. So that normally the chance that someone does this accidentally is not very high, but we did have an operation was it a year or 2 ago where that actually did happen. So it's not completely impossible. If the devices are during the type of the survey have been cleaned out and they're only being used for the survey, then the chances are very limited that you will be able to have duplicates. It's just when you're playing around with different URLs and different ways of sending data to different, if you so want, different accounts, that's where when it can actually, in theory, happen. But as I said, it needs quite many steps for that to happen, usually. Hope that answered. If not, I mean, I would need to look up the steps, but I don't want to give the recipe on how to how to create duplicates neither. It's just if there's someone really has problems and has encountered duplicates before, we can of course compile that a little and explain on how that could possibly happen.
Sandra, just to add on that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. If there is a new tool with the pre-module, tool 15, it's the standard operating procedure for data management for SENS survey. And in this tool, you have the instruction how to check your data before analysis to avoid to be sure that you have no duplicates in the woman database and also in the database at the household level. Using APInfo 7, you have whole steps to follow to be sure that you have no duplicates. And for the child questionnaire with the ENA software and the plausibility check report, you can also check that you have no duplicates in your database. So for that, if you want to see the instruction and the different steps to follow, please open tool 15 in the pre-module. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Fanny, for that. Right, let me go quickly back to the presentation just to see what I missed. I think we covered deploying forms, sharing project. Yes, well, get the form. I guess that's fairly straightforward, but I could just demo it once more with my emulator. I mean, once you've set it up here on the general settings where I've set my server to the URL and I input the credentials, if I need the credentials, that is, then I could go on get blank form. And now you can see the 2 new forms that we've just uploaded have come up here, and I could be downloading them. I'm just downloading one of them. Selected. And now if I go on fill blank form, I should have it. Of course, I have it a couple of times because I used the same emulator last time, but the one here, this one, Wednesday, November 4th, that is the one that we just downloaded here, actually. So very straightforward as well. Maybe there's one small element. The upcoming slides here are just, and we will be sharing them, are just kind of detailing these steps again in case you really needed to see that in a bit more detail than I've been showing you, as I'm going through it rather quickly as well. Normally the only thing that really one needs to remember, because the URL that you have to input into your phone is a little bit different than the URL that you are having to access the account, because it has these Kobo cat in between. Yeah, that's just the way it's kind of structured. Without the Kobo cat, it will not work. You will not be able to connect the phone to the server. It just needs that expression, and then it's usually / and then the username, which we just indicated by putting the bracket there. There is maybe one more element that does make sense to show, actually. Yeah, let me go back to this one. So if I go on account settings, there's something maybe that I could be showing you. Yes. So if I tick this box, if you know, because I don't want to set it up that way, it says require authentication to see forms and submit data. So if you tick this, this would mean that you have to set up a username and a password, and everyone will only be able to access the data when inputting username and password. If you are not ticking this, then you actually only need the URL with the / and the username to access the server and downloading the forms, and you don't actually need to input the credentials. I think in most of the operations, inputting the credentials, it's a question. That it could make sense. It could make sense if you're sharing the phones with someone else, and you just want to make sure that it's only you that can access it. But even that. So it depends a little. I think you would need to think it through for which use cases you would really need to put in a username and password. Yeah, if the phones stay with you and they're not being used for any other use case, then it might be less necessary. But then if you might have to share them and deactivate them afterwards, then maybe it's better to actually have username and password to go with it. All right. The data I showed already, and the next step would be the Raspberry. Are there any more questions to the Kobo at this point?
There is nothing more from the chat box. Does anyone from the floor have the question? Okay, didn't see any.
Okay, then I'll go
to the next topic. Thanks.
Thank you, Ho-Chin. Then I'll go on to presenter mode. Then it's a bit nicer to see for you guys. So now I'm introducing the Raspberry Pi, the famous Raspberry Pi. Basically, it's a server that has been set up by us to include all the necessary configurations to connect it so instead of actually having Aggregate run on your own computer, and for that you usually need the software for the VM to run, and then you probably have to, you have a couple of settings that need to be set right so that it actually works, and it has to be set up a little bit differently for Windows 10 computers than for Windows 7 computers, and all these kind of extra elements. All this has been set up on the Pi already, so you really just have to plug it in. We've compiled a tutorial for that. That's also available for download from the SENS webpage. And as I said, it really looks. It really is very similar, except for that you're not running it directly on your computer. So this is the logo for the Raspberry Pi. So how does it actually work? Well, you actually have a router that gives the IP address to the server. The server is the Raspberry Pi. And then you connect the phones to the IP address that the Raspberry Pi is actually setting up, or where ODK Aggregate has been set up for that. And you actually need to set up and connect the computer also to the same IP address, so that you can actually display ODK Aggregate on your computer, on your browser, on your Chrome browser or Firefox, whatever you're using. So it does look like as if there is actually internet, but there is same as if before when you had been using the Aggregate VM, there is actually no internet. Now, what's the interest? Both the mini router and the Raspberry Pi are super, super small. So, and they are connected through an Ethernet. So the Raspberry Pi, you have like a mini Ethernet cable that you plug into the mini router, and then you can have a USB charge onto a power supply. So you could even have it connected also to a USB power bank if you're also in a setting where electricity can be a problem as well. And then you have the phone and the computer connected to the mini router. I'll just show you a real picture so that it's actually, so it's that small. You see this mini thing is the router, and this mini thing is the Raspberry Pi, the server, which it's inside here. So the yellow one that you have here is the Ethernet cable that connects both the router and the Raspberry, and then they are both being charged through a regular power bar at the moment, and they are being connected. So this is the name of one of the routers. They all are called a little bit differently, but they're all running on the same URL later. So in order to connect Aggregate, you would need to input that URL. I'm going to show that to you in a second. I'll show that to you live. Let me go out of the big mode again and go back here. So don't be phased. This URL looks differently, but this is because I couldn't actually be using a mini router, because if I was offline, then I couldn't be giving this webinar at the same time. So, but they have been set up so that it runs with the URL that I'd been showing you as well. So this is how it looks like. And for the ones of you that have used Aggregate before, there's not much change there. This is the form management tab, on where you can be adding a new form. And this is where you can actually view the submissions that had been done before. So let us add a new form here. Here you can see XML file. I mean, you can try to upload an XLS, but you'll get an error message. The Aggregate can only take XML files. So I've prepared one. So let me upload that. Okay, so I don't want to upload a new form, so I can just close this. As you can see, my new form is now upcoming here. The version that opens without a login is basically this one. So this version allows you to do anything on the form management side, and it allows you to look at your submissions. However, if you do need to do the user, like set up the user, as I said before, you can set up different users here without them needing to have a proper account or anything. It's just kind of a username and a password that you could be assigning. Then you would need to log into the Raspberry or to the aggregate here. Since this is normally just run within your own very little office, we actually didn't secure this with a heavy password because that doesn't seem to be a need. However, in theory, this could of course be accomplished if necessary, that one actually sets them up with a heavier and proper password. As you can see, the username is just administrator. So if I sign in here now, it gives me successful login, and now I have the tab site admin that I didn't have before. And on this one, you can actually configure users. You see there are different kind of capabilities. You can set them up either as data collectors, so they are not able to submit anonymously, but they are able to. They need to have a username and a password, which we then would be putting into the ODK Collect. As you can see, by default, anonymous user is allowed to have data collector and form manager capabilities, but not more than that. You could of course remove that as well if you ever needed, but then that would mean that you needed to log on as well. So you could be creating lots of data collector accounts, for instance, if you need to. And this is just simply done by adding actually users here. Right. Maybe let's look at the submissions quickly as well. I mean, to be fair, like exporting data from aggregate, you would need to be using briefcase for any data that contains any member loops, because aggregate, I mean, the ones of you that have used aggregate before know that aggregate is else only retrieving the non-loopy part, if you so want. However, it can still make sense to actually look at it and see what's actually all there, even though you might not be seeing all. Now, this is not a child form. This is actually the global anthropometry standardization test, which we tested a while back, and that's why the data is still on there. So there is also some mini visualization available on ODK Aggregate, but it's really minimal, just to show you also that in theory it's there. Let's take the child height maybe. Pie chart doesn't make all that much sense. I'll do a bar graph. I'll bar it, and then I have the number of occurrences of children with 110. Yeah, I mean, as I said, it doesn't make all that much sense. For this data set that I'm having here, this is really more to show you that some mini visualizations is also available on ODK Aggregate, actually. Right. Now, what I did tell you that I was going to show was also on where you can convert. And this is the online converter. We also have an offline converter stored somewhere. So there is a possibility if you are in a setting or if you need to go somewhere to the field where you cannot even rely on having occasionally internet, then it's also possible to download an offline converter and use that just so that you are aware. This one, if you do have internet, is probably the most straightforward. It's very easy. You choose a file here, and then you click here, you submit. And then you could be downloading the Xform here. Okay. So now it has been downloading here. You can see it at the corner here. This actually, I've never tried that. Let me do an experiment here. I think this is new because you didn't used to be able to view it as well. This is nice actually. So if you are wanting to use a form, you could actually be also previewing it here as well when you're using Aggregate and you're not using Kobo. So that's good to know. Right, and this one has, of course, also an inbuilt validator. So if anything is wrong, like the brackets that I've been showing you on Kobo, then you could be also uploading it here, and it will show you the error as well. Need to check if I still, because the other one I've corrected and saved it. Let me see if this one still works. Or if I corrected them here as well. No, here you can see here it shows an validate error, but it's the same as the one on Kobo. It now tells you that there is an issue with the variable that's called camp_label. And it tells you that there's a mismatch brackets or parentheses. So it tells you that there's something wrong here. And if you actually carefully look at the expression here coming up here, you can actually see that that bracket here is open, but it's actually not closed here, and that kind of caused the error. So you can do the same thing also with this validator here in case you cannot access Kobo or you don't have a Kobo account, etc. Then it's also possible to do it through this one. All right, let me jump back here and to see this one we covered. I cannot demonstrate how to get the forms. Let me go on to big mode again. Simply because the way I've set up the Raspberry for this webinar doesn't allow me to actually download forms on the computer, on either the emulator or the phone. But it works the same way. At the end of the day, you put in you don't need the Kobo card because you're not on Kobo. You'd actually put in the URL of the Raspberry, as you can see here. So on the server, you then put in the URL, and if you have allowed the anonymous user, as you've seen the little tick box, then you don't need to put in username and password, and you should be able to download the data as well. All right, I think I did show you also the data. Now this shows you that you can be using, as I told you, you can also be downloading with CSV file. Let me go back just to show you also how that looks like here. You could in theory even filter as well, but that doesn't make sense. I mean, well, and not with us here, but you could actually create a filter on the start time and the end time, for instance, if you don't want to download the same data set again. You go on export here, and then you just click on there. It's kind of very straightforward. It looks a little bit similar to Kobo, and once it's ready, you can actually download the file here. Again, downloading a CSV file for instance, for the women or the child form will only get you that first part with all the household denominators, but it will not actually get you the child part. So for that, you would need to be using Briefcase. We have documentation also on that for using Briefcase. The same thing, I cannot demonstrate it here because in order for Briefcase to connect, I need to have the other URL. So But I think the ones of you that have been using Aggregate before are probably very well aware on how that works. Okay. So this one I had been demonstrating as well. So this is the URL, and you will get the presentation, so you can bookmark that if you are interested in using the online converter. And now I can take lots and lots of questions. I hope I wasn't too fast.
No, that's very good pace. And I do see a question from Yorgu. He asked about whether we can keep or procure a Raspberry Pi for themselves for their operation, just in case if there is any problem with a VM or computer. So I'm just saying from our headquarters side, we are happy to send the Raspberry Pi to your place for use, but it's more like a land way. In terms of keep or procure, I would need to talk with Sandra as well, because I know it's not the Raspberry Pi itself function like without any setup is function like that. We have to set up it first in order to be fully functioning. So I think we need more discussion on that, right, Sandra?
Yes. I mean, the Raspberry Pi is really just a server that you could buy for anything. And what we've done, we've equipped it with the VM Aggregate, and you need to install a different type of software onto the Raspberry for that to work. Now we do have instructions on how to do this. I would need to see with our IT team how detailed the instructions are. I'm not clear if they are detailed enough for anyone else to do it other than our team. The other option could, of course, though, be we could be setting up more and send them to Geneva, and if it's on the current agreement, and if that is an option, then it's also possible to get them from Geneva to the field if there is enough demand on that. So that is not a problem that could be done from our side.
Yeah. So it will be more depends on what's the demand out there and whether we will have enough. So it will be negotiable to for example, keep one in Ethiopia just for use. But yeah, it's better we have a bilateral discussion on that following. Okay. Great. So Sandra, you finished your presentation, right?
Yes. Yes. I mean, if there are any specific elements that I should be re-showing, or as I said, if there are kind of any more questions, I can also drill into some things a bit more, and it's no problem.
Okay, so we have a small Q&A session here. I will just open the floor to everyone here. You can either type in your question in chat box or just raise your hand or unmute yourself to ask the question. Just feel free to raise any question. Yeah.
Oh, I can see Tiras put in a trickier one. On downloading the data, usually two sheets appear. How can one analyze linking the characteristics between the child and the mother, given that in some households you have more than one child? Yes. I mean, that's not something that is foreseen, I think, with the general SENS analysis, isn't it, Ho-Chin? Now, there is a bit of a possibility to do that because we have the unique ID, and that one should allow you to tie the mother's and the child's file together, but it's not completely foolproof because the unique ID is composed of different parameters. Oh, let me open the Excel. No, let me me see, unique. No. It's ID. The SENS UID, yeah, that's that one. So it's concatenated out of the survey date, the camp label, the section, the zone, the block, the team, and the household. So in theory, if this one is entered everything correctly, because this is prevalent in all of the forms, like that we have built this in all of the SENS forms. So if the enumerators are filling this correctly, you should be able with this to tie the child form together with the women form. As you can see, this is at the household level. No, this is at the child level, and this is it's being carried forward basically. No, this is at the household level, and this is being carried forward at the child level. So you have this SENS UAD. You have it in every tied to every child, and the same you have that to every woman. Let me just go global forms. Then women. Let me open this one so that I can show that as well. Up. My Excel is again not very compliant. Didn't I have an issue already last time? Okay. Okay. I now need the up. Unfortunately, it's not giving me the rest of the tabs. Ugh. No, I don't need the macro. Okay, let me reopen it. Hoping that it will work. It will basically look, yes, now it works. So I now filter as well for UED. As you can see, it's kind of composed the same. So let me look for the compilation. So it's the same. Can you cannot see see it?
Yeah, we cannot see your Excel.
Oh really? Oh no, of course not. I'm stupid. I stopped sharing. Oh no, and nobody told me.
Sorry, I should flag that earlier.
No, I just had not noticed. Sorry about that, of course. And I keep on explaining. Okay, so I've now filtered here. Here I filtered for the this is the women file. You can also see the W here. So this is how it's being concatenated. So it's out of survey date, camp level, section, zone, block, team, household. Obviously, this needs to be adjusted. If, for instance, you don't have a zone, you need to adjust this, but we have provided instructions for that. And on the child side, it's actually the same as you can see here. And this calculate here actually brings it into the child form. Let me undo or select all so that you can see that as well. So this is the general level where you have all the household information, and then at the end you actually have the UED calculated here. It's calculated here, as you can see. And then you go into begin repeat, you go into your child loop. And here you have just repeated this. This is silently, the enumerator don't see that. All the calculates here, they are just so that you have all this information also in the child record. So in case you want to filter for the camps, or you want to filter for dates, etc., that you are able to do this. And we do the same with the SENS UEID. And so again, if the enumerators fill it, and if they are kind of matching, meaning you're not adjusting it on one file and then not the same on the other, then that UED should be the UED for a specific household, and then you should be able to draw together by using this the child and the women. Did that explain the question, Tiras?
Yeah, yeah, I see. It's a little bit clear, not that much clear. Still, I can't see on how now I can link that. Maybe it's because I couldn't be able to see it in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I'm not sure I have any data here or that I could be showing you this. I would assume you would, if you try to analyze this, are you actually doing this in EpiInfo, or would you be doing this in Excel?
In EpiInfo.
In EpiInfo. Okay, so Fanny is more of an EpiInfo expert than I. But what you could be doing is on the EpiInfo side that you select if you want to link together the women file with the child file, that you would need to select the SENS UED as the common column on where they are tied together. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, it makes sense now.
I mean, maybe Fanny, I don't know if you want to explain that further, or
I have never used the function, the command merge with EpiInfo 7, so I'm not really an expert for that. And for SENS, there is no need to link the child database with the woman database, so it's to conduct additional analysis, not required for classic SENS survey. So if there is a need to do that, maybe we can try to find the best way to merge the two databases. But just now, I'm not sure to know the best way to do that.
but it's a while back. It's a long time ago that I've been using EpiInfo. Then there was a function where you could actually link two tables together by defining a column on where to link them. But as I said, I haven't been using it for a long while, so it could not. Maybe it's called differently. Maybe it's not called link now. Maybe it's called something else. But in theory, that function should be there in EpiInfo. On Excel, the function would be through a VLOOKUP that you would link them together through a VLOOKUP. Or you're creating a Power Query where you actually also link them together, where you do a model where you load the two tables and you link them. So this is, it's kind of, since it's not part of the SENS as such, there are certainly ways on how to achieve that, but we haven't actually taken any steps to describe that, because up to now there hadn't really been a request on that at all.
Yeah, I actually see from the chat box, Yorgu, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, suggest to use the VLOOKUP to merge the two characters using via the same unique ID as well. So
yes.
that's doable.
Yes, that's certainly doable. In Excel, usually, if you need to do that, you do it through a VLOOKUP, which you can find if you Google it and you need help with it. Then you can find that on the net on how to do a VLOOKUP.
Right. Okay. So next question is there Samuel asked about, is there any challenge in storing the VMR? Not clear why we need support from IT, meaning for experienced survey manager.
Yeah, well, there is with, if you're downloading, because I mean these aggregate VMs, they are available for download and they are being updated as aggregate has been updated as well. And we've noticed with the newer versions, it is not so straightforward to make them work. Usually what you need to set up is a VMware as well. So either you use VirtualBox or you use VMware, and depending on how your computer is set up, that already can pose a challenge because you might not have all the necessary permissions that you need to have to install that. And then there are also some issues in assigning IP addresses that come with the newer version and come with Windows 10 computers. So if you're using the old VM that we still have referenced in the documentation, that one is easier. And that one should still work because the aggregate is not being updated all that quickly as in comparison to ODK Collect. But if you're using the newer version, then that's just trickier to do. I had the new version. I had some of my web dev team to look into it, and it took them more than a day. So that's not a good sign if it takes the web devs more than a day, and it was still quite a lot of troubleshooting to go with it. But if you have a keen person in the operation that actually likes testing new things, installing things, and troubleshooting, then by all means try and go for it. It's just either using the old VM or trying to use the Raspberry is the easier way.
And may I ask, do we have a tutorial on how to set up a VM?
On how to, yes, we do. We do. It's the IT, what we call the IT tutorial on the web page. Well, let me, I'll just try and get the link in. So we do have that, but and we have also tried to update it, but it's really a bit of a challenge. So we weren't very confident when we did it last year, and that's why we've decided to try the ways with the Raspberry Pi, which is a lot more user friendly, even to run it as well, because you really just need to plug it in. Whereas if you have Aggregate on your computer, you still need to make sure that you run the VM first, and then you deploy the deploy Aggregate. And then if you had changed the network connection in between, then that usually causes some issues, and some of the antivirus usually also cause issues. And all of that is actually removed with the Raspberry. That's the reason. So this I'm just copying the PDF version in for you, but of course you can also find the full the Word version if you needed that.
Sandra, just in case we are not seeing your window right now.
Okay. Yeah, no, I've just I was just looking for the URL, so I've put the URL into the chat.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, just again to say that if you feel like for your operation and you found it challenging with using your UMR and you want to try Raspberry Pi, which we have, I personally have tried it. It's super easy to use, so don't hesitate to reach out to headquarters, and we are happy to send one to your place for SENS survey. Okay, cool. Any other questions? Don't be shy, just unmute yourself and speak. Okay, I didn't see more coming. So Fanny, from your side,
I think
yeah.
I think someone just unmuted.
Okay, sorry.
But I can't hear anything. But I don't know if that was accidentally or on purpose. I heard some noise in the background, but maybe not. Maybe it was just accidentally. Sorry, Ho-Chen.
No problem.
Go continue.
Yeah, just everyone, you are welcome to ask the question. I'm just saying, since right now we are waiting for any more questions, we do have some questions from previous sessions. So I'm just thinking to take this chance to discuss those as well. Fanny, what do you think?
You mean the previous question for session 1 to 3?
Mm-hmm. Because for session 4, we have all questions being answered already.
Yeah, maybe it's better to keep all questions for next week.
Sorry?
I prefer that we answer to the previous question next week. Question
Okay.
for session 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so then Harry?
Hey Chan. Hi,
Harry,
afternoon,
hello.
everyone. I'm just taking the advantage of the fact that we're not answering the other questions. Just a follow-up question on the Raspberry Pi. I haven't used it before, so that's exciting to know that there's something a bit simpler. I remember earlier, in 2019, with the UNHCR changing to the use of Windows 10, and I think the various updates on the VM and the aggregate, it was a bit challenging. We had to do quite a bit of troubleshooting to be able to do the setup on the new computers. It eventually worked, but yeah, I must acknowledge that yeah, it wasn't as easy as the usual with Windows 7. The question is for the Raspberry Pi. Once you set it up, will we need to have updates, or I don't know if it's upgrade? Because then I'm wondering whether we just buy the kit and have it in the field and have set it up, and then it's upgraded every other, as the updates come in, or once we set it up, then that's it. Well, yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to upgrade it. Of course, if the ODK technology changes completely, then there might be a chance that eventually we have to switch to a new system. But for the time being, I don't foresee any upgrading of that at all. I mean, even the older aggregate VM, we have been actually using it for quite a while, and it's doing its job. So there should not be no upgrading necessary, Terry. At least not for the next 2-3 years to come, for sure.
All right. Thank you for the presentation, by the way.
Most welcome, Terry.
Thank you, Terry, for your question. May I also ask, in your operation, is you are still using VR is because the internet connection is not stable, or is just get used to use that? Because as we just Sandra introduced, the Kobo Toolbox website is actually super easy to use as well, if the internet is available.
I would say for some of the locations, we could use Kobo if you're in Juba, but for the field setups in Maban and out in Jamjang, the internet can be a bit temperamental. So yeah, so I think that essentially will depend on whether that's possible. Like we can, at Juba level, that Kobo can be piloted. I think that would be easy, because the internet is much better, but in the fields it might be tricky.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. May I ask just for if everyone actually, so if you think from your operation you will be need the Raspberry Raspberry Pi, could you just email me and I can like take a note? So even though maybe you are not planning to have a SENS very recent, but we just for us to plan, if we see that, because right now we only have 3 ready to send, but if we see there are a lot of requests for that, we need to prepare and yeah, to procure and set up more for future use. Okay. All right. Any more questions? Seems the answer is no. So thank you, Sandra, for your presentation. We will have an early off for today's session, and thanks everyone for your participant. We are still having one more session next week at the same time. So we will have the introduction on SENS Mapper for API Info 7 to have a demo on how to use the API Info 7, as well as the Q&A sessions to answer all of the questions we have received from session 1 to session 3. And also you are welcome to raise more questions during the Q&A session next week as well. Fanny, do you have more to add from your side?
No. Thank you, Sandra, for your presentation. It was very clear.
Very welcome.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. So that's the end of today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.